Just wanted to talk a little bit about making connections with your loved one. And I believe that I have had some very significant connections with Richard after he passed, starting with at the very beginning when I found out that he had passed. I was in Maui and it was so shocking. It was I was in a state of shock for a long time because I thought, he had some health issues with his heart, but I never ever would have believed that it would have led to death. I thought he had easily another 10 more years to go. He had just turned 85 and he was in good health in every way, so I thought. Um, but it was very shocking, and I have been in a state of just grieving and sadness, and it's been really hard. After being with Richard for half of my life, he's done everything, has taken care of everything for me. And I became very dependent upon him because of that. And now here I am at 70 years old without him, and I have to make decisions that I never had to make before, and responsibilities that I had never had to carry before, because he took care of all of that. And, I tell you something, if someone said to me, you're going to have to go without anything. You're going to have to go without any money, without, I'll tell you what, we'll give you the VW camper van and $800 a month, which is what we lived on once upon a time when we were living in Kauai, and it was the best years of our lives, to tell you the truth. We hardly had any money, but we were just having a ball over in Kauai, and that was, I think that was like around 1984, before anybody discovered Kauai, and we could go from beach to beach to beach, and yet there was a nice balance, where we could go up to Chuck's Steakhouse and have our dinner, and we had breakfast at that time. The Princeville resort was brand new, and believe it or not, when we got caught up in something where our van had to be fixed, we went there to stay overnight because we couldn't stay in the van. The van was, being worked on. So it was $80 a night at the Princeville Resort. It's now $800 a night. But anyway, if someone said to me, you can only have your van and $800 a month, and you can have Richard back, but you have to give up everything else, all the other money that he earned, everything, the ranch, the this, the that, I wouldn't even blink. I would just say, bring Richard back. We can live in the van. We'll figure out a way. We always had fun in that van. But I was thinking about how I was connecting with him, and I prayed and said, Richard, please don't leave me. That was one of the things that I just kept saying. I was so in such a state of shock when I found out that he had passed, and I had not been with him at home on the ranch. I was over in Maui. I was checking on the property and the cottages, and I wasn't going to stay very long. I just wanted to check, and then I was going to come right back. And then I found out, he had died, and I just went into a state of shock after that. And I was crying all the time and saying, Richard, how could you leave me? Why did you leave me? Please don't leave me. And it was too late. It was too late for me to even say, please don't leave me, but even after he had died, I was praying to him, please don't leave me. Because I knew he hadn't died. I knew it wasn't the end of him. I just had to pray at that point to tell him, please stay with me. I know you're not dead. And on top of that, on top of grieving and everything, I was going through kind of a challenging situation because we weren't married, and we didn't have Commonwealth law here in California. I think they did at one time, but they eliminated that law. Even though Richard and I had been together for half a century, we were married as far as I was concerned, and he was concerned. We were married in the eyes of God spiritually, but not legally. That doesn't hold up in court. And I didn't ever really discuss, even though we talked about the will and he told me, and I saw the will. I remember having a copy of it in my computer, but I never wanted to even go there because it just felt it felt superstitious to me. I didn't even want to talk about the will because it was immediately associated with his death, and I just didn't even want to think about it or go there. And I never asked him as he got older. I never said, oh, by the way, Richard, I don't even know where the will is. Where is it? I never even asked him that. And more than that, I never asked him how much money he had. I never asked him that because it just was off limits. It was not something, I just didn't feel comfortable about ever asking him things like that. It was his private affair. It was his money that he earned. And, I know that he had set things up for me through the will, but I just never thought about asking him, okay, what accounts do you have and how much money do you have? Because when you die, I need to know how much money you have and how to get it. I never once asked him that, and I never asked my mother that either. I never once asked her how much money she had, never once. Because I figured whatever happens, and they set things up. You deal with that after they pass. And so I was really kind of falling apart after he died. But then, on top of that, his son was telling me that there was no will. He kept telling me, I don't think he made a will. And I said I texted back and I said, I said, come on. I said, your father was a brilliant lawyer. He did some of the most complicated legal challenges that he always found an angle on, not only including his father with very difficult, challenging things, but real estate, especially real estate. He knew how to pull a rabbit out of the hat. He did very challenging, difficult things. Wills, oh my gosh. I mean, wills he could do in his sleep. That was nothing to him. He did hundreds of wills. I said, your father did hundreds of wills, but he's not going to do a will for his own son and for his life companion? Does that make any sense? But he said, well, do you know where it is? And I had to be honest. I said, I don't. I honestly don't know. I never asked him. I knew that we talked about it, and he said it's going to be set up where you and Brett are co-executors, and that's all I knew about it. But I didn't know where the original will was. And his son kept asking, "You know where it is? Do you know where it is?" I said, "No, I really don't know." I said, "I might have a copy somewhere on my computer, but I don't know." And then I started to get like, uh-oh. I'm not married to him, and, if there's no will, I'm out. I'm like, adios, right? So I was scared. And I prayed to Richard. I said, Richard, I was crying not only that I lost him, but I said, Richard, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I don't even know where the will is. And this is the point of the story of this video, on making connections with your beloved ones, that they do communicate with you. And I'm telling you, Richard sent me the thought. It did not come from myself, because I couldn't even remember. I had no idea where that will was. No idea. But when I prayed to him and I said, I don't know where the will is, what am I going to do? And he sent me the telepathic thought, it's in the safe deposit box, Jackie. It's in the safe deposit box. It wasn't like I heard his voice saying that. It was the thought, the telepathic thought that just kept coming to me. And I thought to myself, oh, the safe deposit box. I forgot about that, because we had set it up together like something like 15 years ago, and I had no idea what he had even put in there. All I knew is we did a safe deposit box together. That's all I knew. And then I got this thought, it's in the safe deposit box. And I thought, oh, maybe he's telling me that's where it is. And to make it really crystal clear to me, because he knew I'm a little slow sometimes with the way I, catch on to things or learn sometimes. And in order for me to really get the message, not only did he tell me telepathically, safe deposit box, but he sent an image. It came to my mind crystal clear. I got this image of a lock. And I knew he was sending it to me. And I started to feel very calm after that. I started to feel, okay, now I know. I'm okay now. I'm okay. The will is in a safety, but I had no way of knowing. So I was still a little nervous about it, because I had no way of knowing whether it was in there or not. All I had to go on was the message that he was sending to me. And when I got home, I went to the bank, and sure enough, there it was in an envelope, the original will. So I know he was sending that message to me. And recently, he helped me on something, because I was scared about what was going to happen with the domain names, because I had no idea what company that he had set up the domain names for the websites. And I knew eventually this is going to be a problem, because we had to shut down all of his credit cards that paid for that. And I had established Schmickles is your friend. There's your friend Tank. There's your friend Tank. I gotta let my dog out. His friend is here. Here's your friend Tank. His friend Tank, the neighbor dog came over to visit. He comes over. So anyway, the credit cards were shut down, and I knew I'm going to be in trouble here because I had established a poetry website way back in 1997, and I was really proud of it because I had published a lot of poets, and I'm talking about big poets, well-established poets, and it was a really important website to me. And even if I stopped publishing like around 2007 on it, but I loved having it up there. And you could still check out anything you wanted. All the poets that I had published, you could still go and check out all the poetry that I had published. And it was worth keeping up just for that alone. And it was associated with a website, a domain name that Richard had given to me that's really, a heavy-duty domain name, Environmental Press. He gave that to me because he knew I loved nature and I wanted to do some things I was always writing as a journalist about protecting nature and wildlife and the environment. So he had bought long ago that domain name, environmentalpress.com. He said, I'm going to give that to you. So I had associated For Poetry with Environmental Press. And by the way, For Poetry, it's not with a 4, it's FOR, poetry.com. And environmentalpress.com is associated with it. They're both like connected together. So I had lost both of them because the payment wasn't made, and I knew that was coming. And I said, Richard, if I could just find out the company. And I was praying to him. This happened just like a few days ago, and I was praying to him. And I said, Richard, if I just knew the company so I could pay it. And he was telling me, I knew he was telling me, get on his computer, which I did. I turned on his computer and I went to his email account and I ended up finding the company. I emailed them. To make a long story short, it was a little complicated, but to make a long story short, I ended up paying for it and it's all set. And as soon as I paid for it, boom, forpoetry.com and Environmental Press was right back up. And I knew Richard was helping me with that. I knew that he helped me to do that. He's the one that helped me to find it. He told me where to go to find the company in his computer, and I found it. So I am absolutely convinced that there are ways that our loved ones communicate with us. They may not, be there for every little tiny thing that happens, but if there's something important that you need their help on, I believe that Richard is there to help. And I believe the same thing with my mom and all the members of my family that have passed. They are like our guardian angels. And if you come to them with this, with your heart and your love and your gratitude, and you say, can you please help me with this? They will help. They want to help. They're like in a place where that's something that they love to do, because they're in a place of God's unconditional love, and I just feel so grateful to Richard, and I did it, these little, couple little short videos about religious rituals and the meaning behind them. And I was just thinking, that there are some people that do not respect, the passing of a loved one, a father or a mother or whatever. And by that I mean, I was speaking about how if I had been home when Richard passed, it would never even occur to me to run and get a death certificate and then go to the bank on the very day that he died and get as much money as I could. The thought of doing something like that would be so foreign and disgusting. It just would never even occur to me to even think about doing that. And I'm not. Let me tell you something. I'm not saying, I'm not putting myself on some spiritual pedestal. I'm not like perfect. I'm not. I have my flaws. I have my problems. I just go, but going by my heart is what I'm saying. That the thought of thinking of money on the day that Richard died would be so disgusting to me. And it would be so very sacrilegious, because even if you're not a religious person, you would have some kind of respect for the tradition at least, and give your blessings and wait and not even think of that sort of thing until it would be the right time, which would be, far, far away from the day after your loved one passes. And that's what I was just trying to get across with those short videos, because there are some people that do that, There are some people that, members of the family, you hear about this as soon as the parent dies, and, the brothers and the sisters and whoever, they're all scrambling. Oh, he's dead now. Okay, I'm going to run to the bank and get, whatever money I can, Now, let me tell you something. The fact that I know that I communicate with Richard, he knows everything. He sees everything. He's completely aware. He's completely aware. And he knows everything. He knows everything. So that's all I'm going to say about this. And have a good afternoon, and thank you for listening. Bye-bye.